The Minister of Interior, Patricio Carrillo, said that the national government is working to overcome the problems of the system while assuring that it is complex to find quick solutions in an environment of high contamination and violence. The Ecuadorian prison system has registered an increase in violent acts that have called into question its effectiveness and credibility. However, the government assures that it is implementing a strategy to deal with these phenomena. In Colombia, the Gulf Clan ended the arms strike that restricted trade, the movement of vehicles and highways, on the mobility of the population for those who travel on the routes with attacks in at least 11 departments of the country. After the extradition of Darío Antonio Usuga to the United States, the paramilitary organization initiated last Thursday an arms strike that generated anxiety and fear in several regions of the country, assuring that the actions had the purpose of opposing the government's decision to present Usuga as a great criminal to justify his extradition. The Gaitanista self-defense groups of Colombia stated that the terrorist actions were necessary so that the government would observe their political and military capacity and comply with their instructions. And by signing several agreements, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, finished his tour of Central America with a positive balance to promote the integration and development of the region. López Obrador began his tour in Guatemala, where he signed agreements on the migratory situation and bilateral cooperation. During his visit to El Salvador and Honduras, López Obrador agreed to increase the Mexico Sowing Life program and Young People Building the Future programs. In Belize and Cuba, commercial ties were strengthened and an agreement on health care was signed. According to specialists, López Obrador's visit to the region gives hope of creating an axis of nations to combat inequality and promote development and progress. In the United States, a congressman warns that arms shipments to Ukraine have depleted the nation's military arsenal. Wisconsin Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher warned that the measures taken by the administration have wiped out 7 years of stockpiles of anti-tank missiles sent to Ukraine to help in the conflict. Washington has so far granted almost $4 billion in military aid, and President Joe Biden is expected to sign the 2022 Lend-Lease bill on Monday, which would allow the United States to export unlimited amounts of arms to Ukraine. This amid continued pushback from Russia, whose officials have warned that the White House that if it keeps sending weaponry to Ukraine, it will end up having unpredictable consequences. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, people celebrate the day of the victory in the Great Patriotic War, a significant day for the Russian people and the countries that once constituted the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Russia celebrates the 77th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Army over Nazism in the Second World War on May 9th. The German surrender took place days after the Red Army took the city of Berlin, the stronghold of Nazi power, on May 2, 1945. To commemorate this date, a grand military parade is held every year in the heart of Moscow. This year's events are marked by the military operation that Russia carries out on Ukrainian territory since February 24th, with the aim of protecting the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, besieged by Kiev since 2014. In his speech, President Vladimir Putin said that Russia launched a preventive strike in Ukraine in view of the increasing militarization of Kiev through NATO and an imminent risk of aggression against the territories of the Donbass and Crimea.
Seen military infrastructure being deployed, hundreds of foreign experts working in Ukraine, how NATO weaponry was being supplied. Danger was growing day by day. Russia launched a preemptive strike. It was a necessary measure and the only possible measure in this situation, a decision of a sovereign and independent country.
Speaking at Red Square in Moscow, President Vladimir Putin said Russia tried to seek an agreement on security guarantees with the United States and NATO, but these countries were planning a new large-scale operation in Donbass and Crimea.
Despite our difference regarding international affairs, Russia has always advocated a comprehensive and indivisible security system. assistance needed by the entire international community. On December last year, we proposed to conclude an agreement on security guarantees. Russia called on the West to compromise for the common good, but NATO countries turned a deaf ear to us, which means they had other plans, and we can see that now. They were preparing a new military operation in Donbass, an invasion of our historical territories, including Crimea, and Kiev was considered the acquisition of nuclear weapons.
On the occasion of Victory Day against fascism, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, stated that his country gave a preemptive response to the Ukrainian aggression by means of the special operation. According to the head of state, the decision was the stance of a strong and independent sovereign country, and it was the best approach to the Kiev government's aggression. Putin detailed that he observed the deployment of military infrastructures and the supply of armaments by NATO. However, during his speech, President Putin said Moscow promised to do everything possible to avoid a global war. Therefore, he called on the West to maintain a dialogue and look for solutions. However, the head of state alleged that NATO countries did not want to listen. Also, on the occasion of the 77th anniversary of the day of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany, about 1,200 activists of the Russia's United Young Guard and the volunteer company of the Combat Brotherhood artistically performed the Guard of Memory near the Latvian embassy in Moscow. Also, employees of the Russian embassy in Slovenia paid tribute to the memory of Soviet soldiers who died in World War II on Slovenian soil. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres began Monday a two-day official visit to Moldova, and from there he will continue to Austria. United Nations Secretary General spokesman Stefan Jurek said in Moldova, Guterres will express his gratitude for the generosity of the Moldovan people for welcoming almost 500,000 Ukrainian refugees in the midst of the ongoing conflict. He noted that this year marks the 30th anniversary of Moldova's membership to the United Nations, and that the visit will be an opportunity to discuss and show appreciation for Moldova's contribution to the work of the United Nations, like taking part in peacekeeping missions. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced on Monday that his country will ban imports of Russian crude oil.
It's a very tough decision for Japan, which relies on imports for oil as an energy resource. But it's the time when G7 solidarity is of utmost importance. Based on the G7 leaders' statement this time, it was decided to take measures to embargo Russian oil in principle.
We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Monday, the presidents of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, and Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, reaffirmed the decision taken by their respective countries to consolidate their bilateral relations and their strategic cooperation. The Syrian president stressed to his Iranian counterpart that Tehran is a brother country, friend, and loyal partner, and that cooperation between the two nations must continue in order to prevent the United States from rebuilding the chain of international terrorism that it has used for decades to harm other countries. For his part, the Persian president stressed that the suffering of Damascus also affects Iran. Therefore, he affirmed that his country will continue to provide all possible forms of support so that Syria can overcome the difficulties it is going through due to the Western sanctions, and especially in the fight against terrorism. Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa resigned Monday after dozens of people were hospitalized when he armed with sticks and clubs attacked protesters. The country has suffered months of blackouts and dire shortages of food, fuel, and medicines in its worst economic crisis since independence, sparking weeks of overwhelmingly peaceful anti-government demonstrations. Scores of Rajapaksa's loyalists attacked unarmed protesters camping outside the president's office at the seafront Galfast promenade in downtown Colombo since April 9th. Police fired tear gas and water cannon and declared an immediate curfew in Colombo, which was there widened to include the entire South Asian island nation of 22 million people. The resignation of the Prime Minister automatically means the cabinet stands dissolved. In the Philippines, according to preliminary tallies, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., son of the late former dictator Ferdinand Marcos, is reported to have won the presidential election. An official recount points to Marcos Jr. as the likely winner of the presidential election in the Philippines after counting at least half of the ballots. Marcos Jr., popularly known as Bongbong, is expected to be elected as president of the Philippines after obtaining at least 60% of support. Marcos is the son of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos, whose 21-year rule was marked by human rights abuses and plundering of state funds during a period of martial law imposed between 1972 and 1981. In the Philippines, at least 3 people are reported dead after an armed attack on a police station in the south of the country in the midst of the presidential elections. Authorities confirmed the attack near a police station in Buluan, a municipality located in Mindanao, where 3 soldiers guarding the stations lost their life after being victims of an armed attack. The authorities also pointed out that these violent attacks occur regularly before and after the electoral processes and indicated that no irregular group has claimed responsibility for the attack. They also point out that before the beginning of the election day, scheduled for 6 a.m. local time on Monday, 9 other people were wounded in this same province after being victims of explosive attacks. And polling stations closed amidst violent incidents in the Philippines. Some 65 million voters registered nationwide to cast their ballots, seeking to replace populist leader Rodrigo Duterte, who is stepping down after 6 years in office. Voters are also deciding the vice presidency and 18,000 other positions, including senators and local representatives. These elections take place against the backdrop of tensions between China and the United States, who are treating the Indo-Pacific as a staging ground for their global confrontation. The Philippines have come under increasing economic and geopolitical pressure, particularly because of their territorial claims in the South China Sea. Drought impacts in Africa and its population as COP15 opens in Ivory Coast economic capital Abidjan. The 15th session of the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification takes place from May 9th to the 20th. The COP15 theme, Land, Life, Legacy, From Scarcity to Prosperity, is a call to action to ensure land, the lifeline on this planet, continues to benefit present and future generations. It will be attended by several heads of state. It aims to take concrete action against rapid land degradation and its harmful consequences for biodiversity and populations, at a time when the UN estimates that 40% of the world's lands is degraded. The Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara opened the COP15 summit. Nigerian Airlines has suspended plans to ground domestic flights due to soaring fuel prices, pending a successful engagement with the government. The decision was made after receiving numerous calls from the highest levels of government promising urgent intervention. The Association of Nigerian Airlines had initially announced on Friday the suspension of domestic flights on Monday until further notice due to the surge in the price of Jetta 1 paraffin, for its price has almost quadrupled due to the conflict in Ukraine. The Nigerian Consumer Protection Commission said it was seeking to find an acceptable arrangement with major fuel suppliers. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. As always, thank you for watching.